The tension in the command deck of the battlecruiser Sovereign's Pride was thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. Admiral Kex Thanor, Supreme Warlord of the Zephyrian Empire, stood 7 feet tall in his ceremonial combat armor, 4 muscular arms crossed over his chitinous chest. His mandibles clicked with barely contained rage as he glared at the small human delegation that had just boarded his flagship. "You dare insult the Zephyrian Empire by sending a single representative?" Kex Thanor's voice boomed across the deck, causing several junior officers to flinch. "We demand satisfaction for your species' refusal to submit to our rightful dominion." The human representative, a middle-aged woman in a simple blue jumpsuit with Dr. Sarah Chen, xenocultural specialist, embroidered on the chest, looked around the imposing warship's bridge with mild interest. She pulled a folding chair from her pack and set it up directly in front of the towering alien warlord. "Mind if I sit?" she asked pleasantly, settling into the chair before waiting for an answer. "And I don't suppose you have coffee? The trip from Earth was long and I haven't had my afternoon caffeine yet." The assembled Zephyrian officers exchanged bewildered glances. Several reached for their weapons, but Kex Thanor raised a primary arm to halt them. In all his centuries of conquest, no enemy had ever responded to his challenge with furniture and beverage requests. "Human," he growled, leaning forward until his scarred face was mere inches from hers. "I challenge you to single combat for the honor of your pathetic species. If you win, we will consider your people worthy of negotiation. If you lose, Earth becomes another jewel in our empire." Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully and pulled out a thermos from her pack. "That's an interesting proposition, but I think there might be some cultural miscommunication here. You see, humans don't really do the whole trial by combat decides the fate of civilization's thing anymore. We tried that for a while, but it turned out to be terribly inefficient." She unscrewed the thermos cap and poured herself a cup of steaming coffee, the aroma somehow cutting through the recycled air of the warship. Several Zephyrian noses twitched involuntarily at the pleasant smell. "Admiral Kex Thanor," she continued, pronouncing his name perfectly despite its guttural consonants. "I've spent the last 3 months studying your species' military history, cultural practices, and psychological profiles. Fascinating stuff, really. Your people evolved on a harsh world where individual strength determined survival, and you've built an entire society around the concept of might making right." The warlord's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Then you understand why you must face me in combat." "Oh, I understand the concept perfectly," Dr. Chen said, taking a sip of her coffee. "But here's the thing. Humans evolved differently. We didn't survive because our individuals were the strongest. We survived because we learned to work together, to think collectively, and to find solutions that didn't require beating each other to death with rocks." She gestured to the viewport showing the void of space beyond. "Take this situation, for example. You see a problem, humanity won't submit, and your solution is personal combat. Classic Zephyrian thinking. But from a human perspective, you're essentially asking me to engage in a primitive ritual that has no bearing on the actual capabilities of either of our civilizations." Admiral Kex Thanor straightened to his full height, all 4 arms spread, in a threatening display. "You mock our traditions." "Not at all," Dr. Chen replied calmly. "I respect them immensely. The martial prowess of the Zephyrian Empire is legendary across 17 star systems. Your personal combat record is particularly impressive. Over 200 victories, including several against opponents twice your size. But Admiral, when was the last time you personally fought in actual battle?" The question caught him off guard. I command from the strategic level now. Personal combat is for settling disputes and proving dominance, yes. But actual warfare involves logistics, technology, coordination of resources, and strategic thinking on a massive scale. Skills that humans have been refining for millennia, not in single combat, but in collective effort. Dr. Chen stood up from her chair and walked to the nearest console, studying the alien interface with professional interest. "This is a beautiful ship, by the way. The engineering is remarkable, but I noticed something interesting about your tactical displays." She pointed to a holographic representation of the local star system. Your fleet deployment follows classic Zephyrian doctrine. Individual ships spread out to prevent interference during ship-to-ship duels. Very honorable, very traditional. The human reached into her pack again and pulled out a small device, which projected its own holographic display. This is the current position of the human fleet in this system. Kexthanor and his officers stared at the projection in growing alarm. The human ships weren't scattered for individual combat. They were arranged in an intricate three-dimensional formation that created overlapping fields of fire, mutual support networks, and coordinated movement patterns. What had appeared to be a small escort force was revealed to be a sophisticated fleet arranged in a formation the Zephyrians hadn't even detected. You see, Admiral, Dr. Chen continued, settling back into her chair. While you were preparing for single combat, my people were implementing a strategy developed by our greatest military minds, executed by crews who trained together constantly, using weapons and tactics refined through centuries of collective warfare. The silence on the bridge stretched uncomfortably. Finally, one of Kexthanor's junior officers whispered, "Sir, our sensors didn't detect this formation pattern. Their ships appeared to be randomly positioned." "That's the point," Dr. Chen said gently. "Human military doctrine is based on deception, coordination, and adaptability. We don't win because our individual warriors are stronger. We win because we think differently about conflict itself." Admiral Kexthanor slowly lowered his arms, his martial posture deflating. You planned this entire encounter. Of course, the moment your empire issued a formal challenge, our xenocultural specialists began developing a response strategy. We studied your people, predicted your behavior, and designed this meeting to demonstrate the fundamental difference between our approaches to conflict. She finished her coffee and began packing her thermos away. The truth is, Admiral, humanity doesn't want to conquer your empire. We don't want to prove our dominance over you. We want to understand you, trade with you, and coexist peacefully. But if you insist on viewing every interaction as a contest of strength— Dr. Chen gestured again to her holographic display, where the human fleet formation pulsed with quiet menace. Well, humans have gotten very, very good at winning those contests. Not through individual prowess, but through collective intelligence, technological innovation, and strategic thinking that treats every conflict as a puzzle to be solved, rather than a duel to be won. Admiral Kexthanor sat heavily in his command chair, the weight of realization settling over him. What do you propose? Coffee and conversation, Dr. Chen replied with a smile. In my experience, most conflicts can be resolved much more efficiently when people are sitting comfortably and properly caffeinated. For the first time in his long military career, the supreme warlord of the Zephyrian Empire found himself genuinely curious about what humans might have to teach his people about strength.